Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Today's guest is François Candelon, who you may have seen on stage at the Web Summit in Lisbon or even read his column at fortune.com. And with the continued growth of many metaverses and so much hype around the topic at the moment, he's going to join us in diving into why a competition is at hand to capture digital engagement. And we will also explore what metaverses actually exist right now, what their purposes are in shaping the future, and also how organisations across multiple industries can and must understand these rival metaverses before diving in. And hopefully we'll also find out who is winning in the metaverse right now and those wildcard contenders for the future. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Nextiva, helping you engage with your customers and your team in a single app. Now, you might recall Nextiva from episode 1875, where I had a great conversation with Thomas Gorney, Nextiva's co-founder and CEO. Now, Thomas shared how he came to America as a Polish immigrant and college dropout who didn't speak a word of English. But Gorney soon built several market-defining companies before starting Nextiva. And Nextiva brings customer and team conversations into a single screen. So with Nextiva, you'll call, text, chat, video meet, and more. But the really special thing is you'll see the entire conversation history all in a single thread. So now, when a customer contacts you, you'll know their whole story. You can say the right thing right now. So get one app to manage your customer and team conversations by simply visiting nextiva.com/techtalkdaily. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Paris, where he's waiting to share his story today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Good. So my name is François Candelon. I've been with BCG for 30 years, working in the many countries, including China for 7 years. I have always worked in the tech and telecom industry, and today I have actually two roles that are quite complementary. The first one is that I lead our think tank, the BCG Henderson Institute. And I focus my own research on the impact of tech in general, AI in particular, on business and society. So this is half of my time. And the second half is I am a practitioner. Basically, I am supporting companies to try to embrace their AI transformation.
Fantastic. And I'd love to take you back in time for a moment. I do this with all my guests. And ask you, can you remember where your passion for tech originally came from, or a moment that put you on the path that you're on today?
I would say, if I may try to be a bit more specific, I would say the moment I would focus on the moment that brought me to AI, because it was in China, in Guangzhou, in South China, at a forum, an AI forum that was, orchestrated by Fortune, the review, and I found at that time that Europe was totally out of the game, and I remembered Michael Porter's quote, the HBS professor, strategy professor, that was saying that the competitiveness of a nation depends on the capacity of its industry to innovate and upgrade. And given our labor laws in Europe, we absolutely need to have incumbents, traditional companies upgrade. And this is why I decided to focus my efforts on trying to support European companies in particular, but incumbents in general upgrade. And this is why I'm now having these two roles, one as a thinker and one as a practitioner.
Absolutely love that. And of course, it was that path that led you to the Boston Consulting Group. And for our international audience in 165 countries, can you offer a bit of an overview of your work and the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses?
So basically, what we are trying to do at BCG, and we are present in more than 50 countries, is really to try to support CXOs whatever they are, CTOs, CEOs, CMOs, CFOs, to try to support them on what keeps them awake at night. So we try to be we're not sleeping pills, but we are trying to make them feel smoother and more relaxed by supporting them. So it means and what I do personally, as I said, is more okay. How do you embark in these AI transformations? What are the conditions? How should you design your processes, the relationships between humans and AI? So this is what I'm doing every day.
And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today was to demystify the metaverse. It's often accused of being overhyped, frequently misunderstood. So just to set the scene for today's conversation, how would you define the metaverse?
So a few months back, I wrote a paper that I called a non-definition of the metaverse. So I don't know if I'm able to give you that definition, but what I find more useful is to try to look at it from a practical view and to look at what metaverse means to the end user. And when I do that, I would say that I would see it as a virtual recreation of the physical world, either as a reflection of reality. Let's say you think about a digital city, or as a fiction, because you have many games that are now on the metaverse. And what is important is that it's persistent. It builds on internet, but while you browse internet, you can somewhat live in the metaverse. And as such, it is a way, and it reflects the myriad possibilities of human lives or infinite needs, from work to leisure, through, let's say, the creation and so on. So I think this is what is very important to me. And I prefer this type of definition compared to definitions by tech characteristics, because the whatever would we say, there would be at some point a future technological advance that would make us revisit and reassess this approach. So I would say that this is why I'm focusing more on what metaverse means to end users.
100% with you on that. And I've been fortunate enough to go to 3 tech conferences this year in the US, which feels great after the couple of years of being locked down. And one of the things that made me stand up and take notice was how many big brands are beginning to embrace the metaverse. There's a lot of bandwagon jumping for sure, but I was maybe a little bit cynical before these events that our brands going to put their money where their mouth is, but they seem to be. And I know you've just come from the Web Summit in Lisbon. So can you tell me a little bit more about the continued growth of many metaverses that you might be seeing this year too?
No, but I think that your point is very interesting, because you've said, I can see many brands entering. And I think that this is the case. And of course, you have many brands that are experimenting.
Yeah.
Either because they are trying to get some revenues. Directly, you can think about Nike acquiring RTFKT to sell NFT sneakers. You can think as well about the way to try to create more customer engagement. I was very interested by what BMW has developed in Horizon Worlds with this Miniverse, which is a kind of racing game. But I think this is at the moment at the experiment, because to a certain extent they are hedging their risk, because they say, okay, if it takes off, I want to be there. And it's true that all of us, for instance, at BCG, we projected a total metaverse market between 250, 400 billions by 2025. Gartner was predicting that by 2026, 15% of people would at least spend 1 hour a day on the metaverse. But I must admit, I'm a little bit cautious about it. I'm old enough to be cautious about these hypes. And for instance, you might have seen that Gartner, in its hype cycle, has positioned it on the trough of disillusionment. But we need to be careful, because I see it more as a push than a pull. And to give you one example, and I don't know if you've already led meetings in the metaverse, but when you speak to avatars, you have much less, you have nothing, not the non-verbal communication doesn't exist. Therefore, it's much more difficult to adapt what you say. So I'm not saying it's dead. The other way around. I think, as I said, that it would come up again, but it will be made with ups and downs. And I always remember that if we are back to 2001 with the dot-com burst, I remember, let's say, a front page of the New York Times that was saying that the giants of e-commerce are extinct now.
Yeah.
And I think that at that time they were neither gigantic nor extinct. And if you want to see it, it's actually on the November 25th. So it's I give the source.
Wow. Something I saw recently, I mean, in the summertime, there was, I think it was Decentraland, they hit the headlines for giving mortgages for virtual real estate. So people had a mortgage on virtual land on Decentraland. And that all got all the headlines. But then there was a report last week that Decentraland had, I think it had 38 active users on the average day, which kind of blew me away. So as you said, there's so much work still to be done, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned there's a lot of brands edging their bets and experimenting at the moment. And do you think we are beginning to see somewhat of a virtual gold rush to try and capture that digital engagement? Or is it just FOMO driving it all?
No, it depends. It depends on how you define digital engagement, because if it is on the way to capture, let's say, better customer intimacy, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's true that the underlying tech and experience in Metaverse offer an enhanced way to engage customers and virtually, and to get additional data. And you can think a bit, for instance, at like tracking. You can track body movements, eye positions, and I like what the chief privacy officer at MasterCard says, that with Metaverse you have data collection on steroids. So that's really good. But I think that in terms of digital engagement, and maybe it was your definition, you wanted to broaden it a bit. But as I said, you have plenty of opportunities to get direct revenue streams with digital assets, digital services, hardware for some people. But I think that maybe there is something that is a bit underestimated, which is the impact of the metaverse as a digital twin, both for B2B product development, because you can test things, so it can accelerate the time to market and reduce the cost for product development. But as well, it reduces the risk of failure, because you can, for instance, check whether your design is appealing to a specific audience and so on. So I think that we need to look at this both from a revenue stream, an opportunity to grow, and all the companies are looking at additional growth. Let's say 15 years ago, it was just after the GFC, it was more about, let's say, China. What could I do there? But here, the metaverse looks a little bit like a new Far West, where there are so many things to do. So that's good. But this is why I would say I would encourage these brands, as it is a Far West, to be a bit careful, because there are some dark sides on it, and these companies might not be ready for that. So if I take the example, and I don't know at all if it's it, but if it's right or not, but if I take BMW, as I was talking about them a little bit earlier on, when in the real world, what they know and where they are great at is at creating a great car in the physical world. But in the miniverse, they are entering the economy of attention. And this could, if they want to be really great at it, they could create a kind of addiction. And in the metaverse, you will have many other social issues that will be amplified. It can be about hate speech, it can be about fraud, privacy information, whatever. So I think that it will be very important for these companies that are entering this new virtual country to make sure that they are not naive and that they are socially responsible.
And we mentioned a few things there. And if we go to the digital engagement piece just for a moment, I suppose there is an argument that the world of Web 2 is incredibly saturated at the moment. It's very hard to get your voice heard. Would you say that there are more opportunities in Web 3 because it's easier to make your voice heard from a brand point of view?
I would say it depends. And we will be back maybe at some point because there are very different types of metaverses. So I don't know, depending on them, your voice might be heard or not. So I think it's more something or somewhere where people can see opportunities for growing business. And as I said, this is maybe an opportunity and you want to experiment and make sure that you're not left behind.
100%. And for people listening that are hearing about a lot of this stuff for the first time, can you just expand on what metaverses actually exist right now and what their purposes you see or what their purpose will be in shaping the future?
So I would say that on that you have a clash of visions. I would say with two big things. You have some players like Meta or Microsoft that are really pushing for a vision of metaverses where VR will be the technological basis and where immersion is key. Yeah. And on the other side, you have players like Roblox or Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite, that are really pushing much more for a vision of, let's say, blockchain, Web3, something which is much more decentralized and where users will be, to a certain extent, the key stakeholders, either because they really produce, they generate content on one hand, and on the other hand, because of the creation of a digital asset economy with NFTs and so on, that would really be different. But what is for sure is that each of these players are trying to import their narrative. They are knocking on the door and say, no. If you say metaverse, look at me. I am the metaverse. And the other will say, oh, no, that's me. I am the metaverse. And so we did, I think, an interesting research using an NLP methodology to look at all the documents that these players are using in the way the narrative they try to impose. And we found 3 to 4 different natures. So you have on one side, you have the ones who are really like Microsoft with Mesh or Magic Leap. They are focusing much more on B2B issues. And the keywords for them are holographic, team, experience. Then you have a player like Meta, which is more trying to create a metaverse that resembles an immersive social media tool. And for them, the keywords are people, creator, one. And then you have, let's say, these other guys like Epic Games or Sandbox that are trying to create in the metaverse a virtual entertainment opportunities that revolve around their own digital economy. And here, the keywords are more about game, asset, blockchain. And last but not least, because at the moment they are the ones that are the most successful, if you take Roblox, where only the platform is proprietary and the content is open and potentially interoperable, it's literally like a social media platform today. Here, the keywords are community, experience, public. So I think that's very interesting to see these different players trying to do that. But these questions will be very important because it will shape the economy of the metaverse and who wins under which conditions depending on who you are, if you are a constructor like the ones I've just described, or if you are more a contributor or like a Nike, a Balenciaga, or a John Deere.
And for any business leaders listening at the moment, how can their organisation better understand these different metaverses before engaging? Do you think they should be just monitoring at the moment before diving in headfirst?
So I think that they need to do two things, and I encourage them to experiment, but even to launch these experimentations, because you cannot do everything everywhere. I think that they need to do two main things. First is to try to look at who is winning, which is, even if it's difficult to place a bet, but I will give you a few elements that they should do, in my opinion. And the second, depending on their characteristics and what they want to do, which type of metaverses they are, I would say, more strategically aligned with. And as I said, in order to make it economically profitable, because it is not just an experiment for experimenting. So if I try to look at who is winning, I would encourage them to look at three things. The first one is, of course, the adoption. That's obvious. But I think they need to look at tech. And in particular, as I said, we have a clash of visions. And therefore, the way these technologies are developing is important. And on one hand, you have the maturation of VR technologies that would favor, let's say, Meta and Microsoft. If it is really they are together, let's say, if this technology is maturing, and therefore immersion is easier. And on the other hand, the other technology that is very important is, more than the technology, the standardization of the decentralized technologies. And because it will, if it is standardized, it will create interoperability. And if it creates interoperability, then for Sandbox, Roblox, this is much better. So I think that this notion of interoperability, because you could bring your digital assets from one place to the other, is very important. So tech, how does it mature, is important. Then, of course, you need, and the last point there is really about the regulation and how the regulation will get extended to the metaverse, and especially the extension of the new regulatory regimes of the data use, the crypto, the gig economy. How is it extended to the metaverse? Will be a critical question. So these are, in my opinion, the three trigger points they need to look at, to monitor, to see where to experiment now and later. And then, of course, you need to see how strategically aligned you are. I was mentioning John Deere, who is clearly leader in his sector and looking for constructing a premium digital offer to his customers. For sure, I'm sure that they could do something kind of partnership and with the Magic Leap or with Microsoft. That's for sure. On the B2B, if you have a big brand and you have a strong positioning, for instance, you have Marvel, Balenciaga, they can partner with constructors like Meta or Epic Games, so to be the premium offer, and they would benefit from high quality experiences. So this is very important. And then you have the other companies that are maybe creative but less well known, and for them, I think a platform like Roblox can be a good opportunity to maximize the exposure of their creativity to customers. But you need to be careful there. So at Roblox, you have tens of millions of experiences on that platform. So you'd better be extremely creative if you want to get heard.
And you said there's a big clash of visions there, and I know Amazon, Apple, and Google are all working on AR headsets at the moment. Do you think that will muddy the waters further?
So I think we will see, it might accelerate, but we need to recognize that we are at the moment a bit far from this. And I think that VR at the moment is clearly not moving fast enough. And this is why I would see, for instance, the recent collaboration between Microsoft and Meta more as a defensive move, saying, okay, guys, we need to unite to make sure that we push forward fast enough, because at the moment this is more, let's say, the blockchain-based vision that is winning. So I think that this is a point where we need to be careful. But it's true that the more you have, the more likely you will be to have to have the metaverse moving up the hype cycle to the Gartner hype cycle.
Well, I've loved chatting with you about your origin story, what put you on this path, and the future of the metaverse. But as we come full circle now, I'm going to ask you to look back on your career. And is that a funniest or interesting story that happened that you could leave us with today?
So I don't know. It's maybe not the funniest, but it was it was one that was very important to my mind. So we are in 2013. We are in Shenzhen. And I have a meeting with Zhen Zhengfei, the Huawei's founder, and in that meeting, everyone was Chinese except myself, and we are discussing about let's say best practices, organization questions, so on. And at some point, he asked the ones who believe that he would die one day to raise their hand, and this question might seem, let's say, a bit awkward, but in the Chinese culture, it's really impolite, and I would say even forbidden to mention the death of someone in his presence. And so, fortunately, I knew this question, but I had a double or quit moment, and all the my colleagues or his, let's say the Huaweiers that were there, everyone was looking at its shoes, at his or her shoes, and so I said, okay, what should I do? And I decided to raise my hand, and so he told me, oh, you're very brave, young guy. I wasn't that young, and I said, I replied, I know that I should not do it, but I'm here to tell you the truth. And this is something he liked. And it was the beginning of, I would say, a long-standing relationship. And I had some key takeaways out of it. First is the fact that we are extremely anchored in our culture, and that these different cultures actually make sense, and there is a richness in this diversity. The second thing is that there is value in investing in others' culture, and I think that at a moment when the world is a bit fragmenting, we should remember it, because the more you know, the less you're scared. And the third thing was that whatever these differences, if you are genuine, this is I would say it's really critical to be genuine. And when you are genuine, nothing bad can happen to you. So it was for me one of the most, let's say, decisive moments in my career.
Wow, what an amazing story. Absolutely love that. And for anybody listening that would just like to find out more information about the work you're doing at BCG, what's the best starting point for everything, in particular the topics we covered around the metaverse today?
So basically, you can look at the BCG Henderson Institute website. You can look at my LinkedIn profile, so François Candelon, and on the first Friday of every month, you can read my column on fortune.com.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll add links to all that, including the fortune.com column on the show notes, so people can find that nice and easily and keep up to speed with everything. Just love chatting with you today about who's winning the metaverse, who those wildcard contenders might be, what it means for the future, and obviously how we need to rein ourselves in a little bit as well and be careful of some of the bad stuff out there. But overwhelmingly, there's a lot of positives. So thanks so much for sharing that with me today.
Thank you, Neil.
The metaverse is one of those diversive topics, isn't it? Everyone's got an opinion. Some are for it, some are excited, some are nervous, some are scared. But, if you look back a few years ago, well, and really, if we look back at our history, it wasn't too long that people were afraid of going on the internet, using email, using their credit card to go online shopping for the first time. We've witnessed this kind of change before, and I'm excited and cautious of where it's heading. But over to everybody listening, you've heard from me and today's guest. What excites you about the metaverse? What are you, or are you not interested at all? I want to hear all sides of this story, so please email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. Let's keep this conversation going. Now, I'll return again tomorrow with another guest, but a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.